From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South. I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. The Supreme Court in Argentina has rejected an appeal by the indigenous leader Milagro Sala against her detention. Sala has been in prison or under house arrest for most of the last 2 years in connection with several charges. This appeal related to the so-called eggs case, where she was accused of throwing eggs at the house of Gerardo Morales, the governor of Jujuy province. She says she wasn't even present that day, and the cases against her are political persecution. The Vice President of Ecuador, Maria Alejandra Vicuña, has been accused by a former advisor of asking for several financial contributions. During her time as a congresswoman, Ángel Sagabay made the allegations in an interview with local TV. He said that from 2011 to 2012, he had to make a monthly deposit in Vicuña's personal account of $300. He said that after getting a promotion, he was asked to raise his contribution to $1,400 per month. Another assemblywoman was recently dismissed over similar accusations. Our correspondent in Quito, Denise Herrera, has the story.
Hello, good afternoon. Indeed, the Vice President of Ecuador, Maria Alejandra Vicuña, has been accused of making illegal contributions to her assistance. According to one of her former advisors, in a statement he denounced that he worked with Vicuña in 2 different positions and he had to make a monthly payments of between $300 and $1,400 from 2011 to 2013, directly to the Vice President. In light of these events, the Attorney General of Ecuador, Ruth Palacios, confirmed that her office will start an investigation against these accusations. Also, the Vice President of Ecuador, Maria Alejandra Vicuña, in her Twitter account confirmed that she will prove her innocence and she will prove her innocence through the courts. Is all the information we have for now. Back to you at the studios.
A migrant mother in Mexico says neither she nor hundreds of migrants expected the U.S. Border Patrol to fire gas canisters at children and families. Maria Mesa was photographed running with her daughters from tear gas during the incidents that occurred at the border in Tijuana on Sunday. Mesa has traveled from Honduras with 5 children to claim asylum in the United States. Despite the threats and risks, she says she will continue her struggle for a better future for her family.
I wasn't expecting it. We never thought they were going to fire these bombs where there were children, because there were a lot of children, not just mine. There were more children with mothers there. They also started running too, just like me. Well, I felt sad, scared and wanting to cry. That's when I grabbed my daughters and started running. At that moment I thought I was going to die with them because of the gas. We ran and we fell into the mud and struggled to get up amidst the gas. A young man gave me his hand and pulled me up to my feet.
The Mexican government has demanded the U.S. authorities carry out an exhaustive investigation into how non-lethal weapons were fired into Mexico on Sunday. In the diplomatic note delivered to the U.S. Embassy in Mexico City, the Foreign Ministry says Mexico remains committed to protecting the human rights and safety of migrants. It also called for U.S. cooperation to deal with migration flows. And as calm returns to the border on the north side, residents of San Diego are shocked by the aggressive response of the U.S. security forces to migrants. They are afraid of the militarization of the area.
I think it's heart-wrenching. I think that just because a few people are trying to cross illegally, that they're, kind of punishing the masses for that by throwing the tear gas.
And I don't know, people have been coming to our country since the very beginning, so I don't know what the problem is.
The Mexican government said it is deporting many of the migrants who were tear gassed on Sunday. Our correspondent in Tijuana, Alina Duarte, has more details.
Close to 100 people have been deported or are in the process of being deported, according to the National Institute of Migration. President Donald Trump has basically said that no one will be allowed to jump over the wall, and he justified the use of tear gas and rubber bullets against people, including women and children. The people who tried to cross the U.S. wanted to be detained on the other side of the border and get a fair hearing. They could not achieve that. After this, tension has spread here in the shelter in Tijuana, where there are more than 5,000 people registered. There are people who have been here for 2 weeks, and it is 2 months since they left home. Uncertainty is part of the life of these thousands of people who are living in different shelters here in Tijuana. We only get access to these shelters twice a day, but we have seen people sleeping on plastic bags and cardboard. A camping tent is a luxury. There are just 24 toilets for more than 5,000 people. Mexican people are helping a lot, bringing food and other supplies. NGOs are giving supplies and medical care to everyone, especially pregnant women and children who mainly suffer from respiratory problems.
Thank you, Alina, for that report. Women in Honduras have been marching to demand investigations into the more than 5,000 femicides since 2003. The protesters headed for the public prosecutor's office in Tegucigalpa. They want more special courts to deal with the violence against women, especially cases of domestic violence. 339 women have been murdered in Honduras this year alone. Women groups say the vast majority of such crimes go unpunished.
Without investigation and justice for feminicides, there will be no way to ensure that such violent crimes against women will end.
Public prosecutors and judges have to improve their investigations. The immediate response to complaints of domestic violence and femicides must be to ensure women's well-being and protect their lives.
Several protesters were injured in Honduras on Monday night when the police fired on a demonstration to mark the anniversary of last year's election. The demonstrators say the president, Juan Orlando Hernandez, was re-elected through fraud.
The demonstration began in the afternoon with a march to the government palace.
1 year after the fraud, 1 year after the election was stolen, we have in the presidency an illegal, illegitimate usurper.
But what started peacefully ended with repression, tear gas and gunfire. 3 people were wounded and were taken to the Tegucigalpa teaching hospital. The speeches hadn't finished when the chaos began, generated by tear gas and bullets fired by the police.
The men in the yellow bus started shooting at everyone. People threw themselves on the ground and stayed there.
Journalist Giovanni Sierra, who was covering the protest, told how he was shot at by prison guards on a bus.
Fine. It's just that I got hit. It hurts a lot. A man shot me from the yellow bus.
Witness described the scene as the national police and prison guards cornered the protesters.
We were witnesses to the constant shooting at the crowd that was peacefully demanding the removal of this gentleman who repeatedly violated human rights in our country.
We were 3 meters away and we had to lie on the ground and beg them not to shoot in our direction because we would have been killed.
Human rights defenders immediately condemned the intolerant behavior of President Hernandez's government.
We see how this regime is increasingly relying on the use of armed force and how it is sustained by all the pressure and support from the U.S. with all this militarization.
In the hospital where the victims were sent, staff said they didn't have the equipment they needed to examine the victims properly.
We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back. Scotiabank has confirmed that it's set to sell its banks in 9 Caribbean countries as it downsizes its international markets. Their plan is to sell the Caribbean banks to the Trinidad and Tobago-based Republic Financial Holding Limited. Larger markets in Latin America are still on the table, as Scotiabank reported that its international profits have been greater than its Canadian business over the past year. Telesur has held meetings in several Caribbean countries to discuss strengthening its presence in the region. In Antigua and Barbuda, the channel's president, Patricia Villegas, met the Prime Minister Gaston Brown to talk about expanding both production capacity and distribution. The Prime Minister said Telesur had an important job to do connecting the English-speaking Caribbean with Latin America.
Very important, and I certainly want to commend Telesur for establishing a branch here in Antigua and Barbuda, which will help to bring the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela and, generally speaking, Latin America closer to the Caribbean so that we can exchange news items and that the people within the region will have information. Those in South America and beyond will have information from the Caribbean and similarly would understand what is happening in your part of the world. In essence, I think it is helping to integrate individuals in this hemisphere, and it is an initiative that my government welcomes, and we will support the initiative.
Advocates will gather in Haiti on Wednesday for a high-level meeting on HIV/AIDS. Eleanor Frederick of Antigua and Barbuda's HIV/AIDS network will deliver the future address on the topic of HIV in the Caribbean. According to the United Nations Population Fund, the Caribbean has the highest incidence rate of reported AIDS cases in the Americas. The Jamaican Prime Minister has signed off on a contingent credit facility worth almost $300 million with the Inter-American Development Bank. Prime Minister Andrew Holness announced on his Twitter account that the new loan will provide immediate money in cases of emergency arising from unforeseen circumstances such as natural disasters. A $15 million cancer treatment facility has been opened in Jamaica. It is the second from the National Health Fund. Located at St. Joseph Hospital in Kingston, patients will now have access to treatment using linear accelerations, an improvement over cobalt radiation therapy treatment. In Guatemala, the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women had an special significance given the recent murder of Alejandra Chop, with Chequis indigenous women gathering to demand justice for victims of femicide.
Lighting sacred fires. These indigenous Mayan women in Guatemala pay tribute to the memory of Iko Chu.
We women need to get together and demonstrate against what happened to her. We are lighting candles to ask for justice in Alejandra's name.
Alejandra was killed in a brutal way on November 9th in the Guatemalan municipality of Chisec by her partner, Mario Tutical.
She had been subject to violence for a long time and ended up as a victim of femicide. We want justice for our friend.
For these women, the murder of Alejandra reflects the situation of rising violence against women in rural communities.
When institutions do not take action, it's a big setback for us women. That's why we demand the judiciary to do their jobs with no ifs, buts, or excuses.
According to official statistics, in 2018, there have been more than 700 cases of femicide in the country. These figures could be even higher, as not all cases are properly registered.
We still justify violence against women. We normalize it. When a woman experiences a violent situation, society blames her.
During the march, women also rejected the use of violence against women in public spaces. They also wanted to highlight the sexual abuse accusations involving Guatemalan President Jimmy Morales, who had the case against him thrown out.
Citizens from Santo Domingo in the Dominican Republic have gone on a strike against rising fuel prices. Organized under a coordinator for the reduction of fuel prices and for people's rights, a citizens' strike meant that 90% of public transport stopped, as well as almost 70% of commercial and educative activities. In a document, the strikes noted the strength of the decision of the people expressed today in the successful start of the strike. Unions and social organizations in Colombia are calling on citizens to take part in Wednesday's mass mobilizations. During a press conference, union members called on various sectors to join together against the education deficit, the increase in fuel prices, and future reforms. Organizers expect at least 20,000 people to take to the streets in Bogota. Greenpeace has raised concern about the latest figures showing a significant increase in deforestation of the Amazon forest in Brazil. A report by the Brazilian government found deforestation has gone up for the first time in decade. Greenpeace is worried that the situation will get worsened under President-elect Jair Bolsonaro because he promised during his election campaign to scrap protected lands and conservation units.
Things already are bad, but they can get worse because Brazil's next president, Jair Bolsonaro, made a series of threats to the forest during the election campaign to scrap protected areas, conservation units, indigenous lands, reduce controlling powers, and punishments of environmental crimes. All of this in the past helped to bring down deforestation. If he ends all of it, if he reduces the capacity to punish crime, deforestation of the Amazon, it can explode in an unimaginable situation, and everyone is worried with what could happen.
Argentina is busy preparing for the G20 summit, which is a few days away, with the government deploying thousands of security personnel and restricting public transportation in Buenos Aires. Buses, subways, trains, and even airport transport services will operate on a restricted schedule between Thursday and Sunday. Over 13,000 police, Navy, and airport security personnel will patrol the capital. In addition, the US and other countries are also expected to help with security for the global conference. Our correspondent in Argentina, Edgardo Esteban, has more of what's been happening with the G20 summit and the counter summit, which has been going on since this Monday.
An intense week of activity continues. There are a number of demonstrations planned, including at the Atlanta Stadium and a gathering on Thursday at the People's Summit outside Congress. There are going to be tents, debates, forums, and open talks marking the rejection of the G20 leaders' presence. More than 6,000 attendees, including international delegations and journalists, are about to arrive, and there's severe controls in place for activists participating in the counter-summit. There are a lot of expectations for what is going to happen in the city, because whilst traffic is normal now, we're in a zone which will soon have prohibited access. There are going to be 22,000 policemen. If you recall the Malvinas War, there were 15,000 soldiers active. For this 48-hour summit, there will be more than 20,000 members of security forces in 3 zones. It's going to be impossible to get around. Airports will be closed, public services such as trains and buses are going to be interrupted, roads will be closed, the port of Buenos Aires will be closed as well. Argentina is going to be isolated because of President Macri's government's security decision. Aircraft carriers have been brought in from the US as well as planes from other countries. Israel has helped with border control. Despite warnings and repressive operations, the counter-summit is still being held. And on Friday, a big demonstration called by social organizations, trade unions, and all kinds of diversity movements is going to take place in rejection of Macri's policies and the G20. It will also stand against the accord signed between the IMF and Argentina.
Also related to Argentina, the second leg of the Copa Libertadores final between River Plate and Boca Juniors will be played outside in the first week of December. The final was initially only delayed until Sunday, after River Plate supporters attacked the Boca Juniors team bus before being postponed. At least 6 players were injured and some were affected by tear gas used by the police to disperse the River fans. A statement from South American football's governing body, CONMEBOL, said a venue will be decided as soon as possible. Thousands of public sector workers in Chile are striking outside the presidential palace, demanding better salaries. Our correspondent in Santiago, Tiare Valenzuela, has more.
Thousands of public sector workers have gathered outside the presidential palace to express their outrage at the lack of response from authorities over their demands for wage increases. A readjustment of salaries is negotiated every year, but this year will only amount to a 0.02%, which is equal to a kilo of bread for every worker. This strike could escalate very quickly if workers don't get a positive response from Sebastián Piñera's government.
Also in Chile, a Mapuche indigenous community has begun to recover its territory. The community has started to reclaim its lands located about 10 kilometers south of Culipulli, in what the Chilean government calls Ericea town. The police have been trying to crack down on the movement. We'll be back in a minute. Stay with us. Welcome back. More than 5,000 doctors have gone on a strike in Spain to protest the lack of equipment primary health care facilities. The doctors of Catalonia Labor Union say 76% of medical practitioners in the public healthcare system have stayed off the job. 10,000 other healthcare workers have also downed tools. The strike continues after the union met with government officials on Tuesday but failed to come to a resolution. Scuffles have broken out in Ukraine's parliament after it approved a declaration of martial law. The vote imposes martial law in Ukraine's border regions for 30 days starting on Wednesday. Tensions in the region has escalated after Russian coast guards seized 3 Ukrainian vessels from crossing into Russian waters. And in Crimea, a court has ordered 4 of the 24 Ukrainian Navy sailors captured by Russia to be held in custody for 2 months. It is not immediately clear when they might be facing trial. The sailors are charged with illegally entering Russia's territorial waters. The Nigerian Air Force has launched airstrikes on suspected Boko Haram bases in the Lake Chad region. The offensive comes a week after Boko Haram attacked a military base in the northeastern Borno state, left over 100 soldiers dead. The militia group has escalated attacks against Nigerian security forces as the country prepares for elections early next year. And now let's take a look at some other stories making headlines from around the world.
The French President Emmanuel Macron has said he is aware of the whispered anger over fuel taxes in the protests over the last 10 days. But he also said he will not back down on policies which he calls environmentally friendly. He promised to shut down 14 nuclear power plants. The Yellow Vest protest left 1 person killed and several injured.
This movement has given rise to major demonstrations and also unacceptable violence, both in France and overseas. I want to say here that I do not confuse these unacceptable acts with the demonstrations with which they have been associated. I do not confuse thieves with fellow citizens who want to send a message. I have understanding for these fellow citizens, and I will not give anything to those who want destruction and disorder, because the Republic is both public order and the free expression of opinions.
9 activists from Greenpeace have climbed a chimney at a power station in Poland to protest against coal policies. This is ahead of the UN Climate Change Summit in December in the country. The state-run plant is Europe's largest polluter and one of the biggest coal power plants in the world. China has ordered an investigation into claims by Chinese scientists to have created the world's first genetically edited babies. A video post in social media by a university professor said that twin girls were born with DNA altered to prevent them from contracting HIV. This move could be a step forward in medicine, but also has generated a lot of criticism.
And we come to the end of this news brief. These and many other stories you can find at our website at telesurenglish.net. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. Thank you for watching.